Hey, it's Larry Gonzalez with your housing market update for 13th of March, about halfway through the month. Man, I tell you what, I think you would expect with good jobs reports, with good inflation reports, we would see interest rates going down, down, down. But you know what? They're not clowning around because there is a lot of other stuff going on that is spooking the market, and you're not seeing really a big drop in interest rates like you would think. And before I get into the market update, please like, comment, subscribe. Would love to hear from you. Always interested in feedback. Feedback is a gift, remember. All right, so let's take a look at the big three: prices, inventory, and rates. Prices are going up. We went over that last week. Obviously, it's all about location, location, location. But across the island, home prices are still going up. Inventory is up as well. And then rates. Yes, you've probably seen in the news that rates are lower. Well, they go low, but then they come back up. We'll get into that. We'll show you the kind of what we've seen over the last week or so, but they're not lower right now. All right, they're right about where they were before. Let's look at the big news, the headlines. Inflation moving down. That is great news, but mortgage rates don't care. All right, so let's get into it. All right, so let's look at the consumer price index. That is the price of inflation, the price of goods for you and me, the regular Joes and Janes. And inflation was down both headline and core last month from 3.0 on the headline down to 2.8. Would have been lower, but those pesky eggs are up 60% in price this year or year over year. That is a lot, and that's where we're seeing a lot of the increase overall in the prices. Core strips out the food, and core strips out energy. So what caused inflation to go up or down? Well, I tell you what, core inflation down 0.3 down to 3.1% this last month, and that's great news. And really the big reason was airline fares. Airline fares dropped a sharp 4% last month, and shelter prices, which have been elevated, they've been taking we're talking a couple years really to catch up. They are getting a lot closer to where we actually are with the home prices or the cost of shelter, in particular the cost of rent. So that is great news. That is really good news. Inflation coming down. Now, this is not the Fed's preferred measure of inflation. That is the PCE, but it is still a good kind of lead into that inflation report, which we get, like I said, at the end of the month. All right, let's look at the annualized core rate return. So this shows really over certain periods of time which way inflation is going, and that is not as promising. All right, 12 months core 3.1%, 6 months though is at 3.5%. And then 3 months is at 3.6%. So over the last 3 months, over the last 6 months, you've seen higher inflation than you did previous to that last year. We could see inflation go up, but there are a lot of different things at play here, and we'll get into that a little bit. All right, so let's look at PPI. PPI is the producer price index. It's not shown on this graph here, but producer price index was flat. Headline was flat at 0%. It was actually expected to have a rise at 0.3%, and the core PPI was actually negative, a negative 0.1%, and the 0.3% positive was expected. So that's good news. Wholesale prices are important to consumers because wholesale prices really reflect the wholesalers, the people who provide the goods and services, are going to provide to the consumers down the road. That was a good report. You would think interest rates come down. No, they didn't. Let's get into the next thing here. Not even going to go over initial jobless claims this week because it's really very minimal change. So we'll skip right into VA rates. Last Friday, great jobs report. Great jobs report. Unemployment went up to 4.1%, which is what we wanted. Rates didn't go down because Fed Chair Powell was speaking, saying, hey, I'm not in a hurry to cut rates. We need to take a step back and kind of let the economy, let what President Trump is doing, kind of take effect. Well, this week we had a excellent inflation reports. You would think we were at 6.2% right at the beginning of the week. Maybe we go down to 6%. No. You can see on this chart, the far right side, we're near 6.25% for VA rates, despite two good inflation reports. Not a lot of news coming out tomorrow. What's going to happen next week? Not a lot of news with the exception of the Fed meeting. The Fed is not expected to lower the Fed funds rate next week. They are probably going to take a step back and say, hey, we need to see more impact of what's going on with the rest of the economy. We've seen reports over the last couple of weeks to talk about GDP, the gross domestic product, coming in lower, the economy slowing. We haven't really seen that yet. These are just people talking about what their expectations are. We've seen the stock market get hammered, just hammered over tariff concerns, over basic reports on slower than expected growth from companies. So that's not necessarily good for interest rates. They're kind of pushing that gravitational effect that we expected to see rates go down. Jobs and inflation, just not seeing it. So right now, 6.25, I would expect that we will stay somewhere in that ballpark of 6.25 over the course of the next couple of weeks while we wait for that PCE report at the end of the month. So what does this all mean? Well, mortgage apps, again, on all this news, interest rates are at 4-month lows. Mortgage apps were up for purchases up 7%. Refinances were up 16%. That's great news. Last time rates got this low, buyer and refinance activity picked up. There were a lot of people who stayed on the sidelines because they thought that rates were going to get into maybe even into the 4s, and then they were like, I'm going to wait until rates get into the 4s. Man, there's no guarantee. We get into the 5s, it could be for a week, it could be for a day, it could be months. You just don't know. When you got that bird in hand, you really got to take advantage of it. If you wait, rates pop up, you got nobody to blame but yourself. Get with your lender and see, all right, well, what's the cost of waiting? Maybe I want 5.5%. Well, maybe 5.75% is just as good if we're not going to get to 5.5% for another year. All right. So those are things you got to talk to your lender about to make sure that you're making the right decision. And if you're waiting on the sidelines, right now there aren't as many buyers right now. There are a lot more applications, but there are still fewer buyers. I've met with many realtors over the last 2 weeks, and the open houses you're not getting a lot of traffic right now. But that's going to change. That is going to change. You saw the numbers. Purchase apps up 7% this week. They were up 6% the week before. They're starting. Buyers are starting to wake up. They're going to get off the sidelines, and then now you're competing with them. So don't wait too long or you're going to miss out on seller credits. Sellers, now I'm seeing a lot more price reductions. That's certainly hurting your return. And I got some videos coming out on another channel on why it is a better idea to keep the home and even rent it at a loss rather than sell the home at a loss and have to come to the table with money. And I have buyers who might have to do that if they sell. Remember, like stocks, it's not a loss if you don't sell. You just got to hold on and make it through. And people will say, I don't want an $800 a month out-of-pocket payment. Well, what's your car payment? All right, if you got an $800 a month car payment, is that car payment going to appreciate? No. But the house that you own is going to appreciate. And guess what? Somebody else is paying 75% of that mortgage. You might be paying 25%. All right, so that's kind of like I call that the home TSP. Anyway, if you're thinking of selling, go talk to your lender, go talk to your realtor, but you run the numbers before you make a decision that you might actually end up regretting. All right, and that's all I got for you guys this week. Have a great week. We'll talk to you later. Aloha.